Welcome to Draw This. Draw This is a series of videos where I'll randomly generate a word and then draw it for you while describing my process so that you, the viewer, can follow along. So we'll go ahead and get started. I'm going to do something special for this episode and use the art idea generator on somecallmebeth.com's website. And that art idea generator gives me a horse playing golf. So that's going to be fun. I'm going to do a sort of comic book or cartoon style horse using mostly line art with color fills. I'm here in Corel Painter and I have a sketch that I made. And then over that sketch, which I've made blue, I'm going to paint on a new layer using the scratchboard tool, which is set to a diameter of 2.0 pixels. And then I'm just going to follow over everything and fill it in with a nice inking. I'm varying my line width as needed, but trying to keep my line overall pretty consistent. Because the anatomy of a horse and a human differ quite a bit, it would be impossible for a real-life horse to be in this kind of pose taking a golf swing. So of course I had to adjust the horse's anatomy a little bit to make it more human and fit the action. Here I'm just going to rough in the tail and do a quick sketch of it. It's okay if I do it a little sloppy because we can go ahead and erase any areas that we need to using the eraser. I'm going to fill this in a little bit more to make it look a little more three-dimensional. I'm really going to do that in any of the flat areas to just fill them in. And then I'm going to use straight line drawing mode to help me draw the club. I'm going to draw the tip of the club and a little bit of a handle. I'm going to work on the patch of grass where the T was located, and I want it to look like it's kind of broke off and there's dirt flying out and the T is flying off. The ball's going into the distance towards the hole with a little bit of a flag sticking out. And then now I'm going to draw in the background. I held shift to draw a straight line there. And now I'm going to add a little more detail to the grass, some little specks of dirt and some little grass blades here and there, a little bit of a distant sand trap. And then now I'm going to add a layer for hatching using a slightly smaller brush. This hatching can imply 3D contours, shadows, difference in color, and all kinds of different things, even texture. I'm using a variety of line widths and line directions, and I'm really trying to follow the contours of the shape that I'm shading. The hatching should enhance, not detract from the piece, so you want to be using the right direction on this hatching. The horse has a little bit of veins on its legs, so I'm drawing those in. I'm not happy with how I did the tail, so I'm going to erase it and redraw it, and that's the beauty of digital art, is that you can do that with your ink. Now I'm going to make the tail hair a little bit longer so that it looks more realistic like a horse's tail, and then just add a few more details here and there and everywhere to make the piece come together. I'll add a shadow layer and just put some little specks that look like the grass has been tread on and it's casting some shadow from the horse. The club is too short, so I'm going to lengthen it by breaking off the tip and then moving it and extending the pole. And then I'm just going to erase anything that I don't like there on the side to fix it up. I'm going to add some new layers under the ink for color layers, and you want to separate each color or each overlapping object onto its own layer. So I'm using a bright color like this red. I'm painting with the scratchboard tool set to 100% opacity, and then just going along the edges, painting in the edges first and then filling in the center with a bigger brush. And what this is doing is using this bright color is helping me see where I have or have not filled in the lines. We don't have to keep the horse this color, we can change it later. You want to be efficient with your layers. You'll notice I'm putting the inner ear and the hooves and the club all on the same layer, and that's because those objects don't interfere with each other or overlap, so they don't need to be separated on their own layers. I'm going to add some empty layers for the background colors. I'm going to start with the grass and just fill that in roughly with a grass green. Then rather than fuss too much about painting and erasing, I'm just going to use the pinch tool to pinch it along the line. I'm going to hold shift to get a nice straight line and paint in the sand, as well as the color for the distant hills. I'm going to fill in the sky with a nice sky blue, and then add a layer for the golf tee, the flag, and the golf ball, and the grass, and the dirt, and add a little bit of color for those. Now I'm going to go ahead and just turn on preserve transparency and fill in the horse colors with more appropriate colors, which will be kind of based on the sky color, kind of blue grays. And then now I'll use a large digital airbrush to add some lighter and darker colors to the sky, as well as the grass, just to make it look a little more three-dimensional. And then here and there I'm going to add a couple little specks of color. You can add some depressions using a dark tinting layer, and then you can blend it a little bit to make it look more organic. I'm going to add form to the horse by using darker and lighter colors as well, and the light in this scenario is going to be on the top left, so that's where my highlights will be. shadows will be on the opposite side. You want to fill in the shadow areas on the mane and everywhere else, and you'll probably want to just follow the areas of hatching that you did and shade on top of those. On the opposite side, again facing the light, you'll want to add your light highlights to the mane as well as the other areas like the hooves. Now we can add more color depth to the background objects so they're not all one static color. That just makes it look a little more interesting. We'll add a shadow for the ball floating in midair, and then we'll add a multiply layer and use the sponge to add some texture to the grass. We'll also add some sponge texture to the horse's fur to make it look a little more furry. We'll make the club look metallic and add some shine to it on its own layer. And then we'll group the horse ink and color layers together and then use select group content to go ahead and add some tinting over the whole horse. We'll reduce the opacity, and then we'll go ahead and open the saved image in Photoshop, and we'll add a little bit of blurring using the new path blur feature. So what you want to do is you want to click and add points, double click or click on the endpoint to end the path, and then you can drag each point around to adjust the blur. So this blur is going to be kind of following the motion of the golf swing. Remove the blur in areas by adding another path, and then to remove the blur you'll want to click on each of the endpoints and reduce the endpoint speed. You'll have to do this on both ends, and wherever this non-blurred area line is going to remove the blur from that area. You may have to do that in a few different areas. You can adjust the blur to add movement to the horse following the swing. I'm going to add several paths here. Now our horse looks like he's swinging the club. We'll also do some paths for our dirt and our ball to make them look like they're moving. And then we'll use the blur tool to go ahead and just blur out the background a little bit to add some focal depth. We want the horse to look like it's in the foreground, so we're going to try to avoid painting on the horse if we can. But just go ahead and blur everything else besides the horse, and that'll make the horse look like it's right up in front. We'll add a few adjustment layers and use masks to kind of mask out some areas. Basically, we want the top left to be warm and the bottom right to be cool. And now we have a pretty much finished painting. We'll take a look at it completed here. And I think this is a pretty good try for mixing a human pose with a horse's anatomy. If you like this video, take a quick second to share this video and like it on YouTube and on Facebook. And don't forget to click the subscribe button so you can see more episodes of Draw This every Tuesday. Thanks for joining me, and I'll see you next time.